Directors and studios usually go to exceptional lengths to get their movies made, but sometimes they go as far as breaking the law. In this video, we'll look at some of the funniest, some of the wildest, and dangerous stories that happened behind the camera that often broke, or at least pushed the boundaries of the law. From popular franchises shooting without permits, movies blatantly illegally copying off of others, to directors horrifically treating their stars, which make your colleague Karen's passive-aggressive post-it notes look tame in comparison. Get ready to hop in the car and go on the lam as we take a look at 10 times movies broke the law. The Fast and Furious series has had a long run, with 8 movies already under their belt and a 9th on the way. The franchise is as big as Tyrese's forehead, centered on a bunch of street racers who are involved in a bunch of high-profile heists. The franchise has changed since the original feature, but these run-ins with the law are a constant, so it's unsurprising that the studio themselves came up against the law while filming the 3rd installment, Tokyo Drift, a movie which focuses on the drifting community in Japan. Director Justin Lin wanted to shoot on location in Tokyo, in particular the busy area of Shibuya, one of the most crowded locations in the city. The sequence in question involved a bunch of racers drifting through a cross-section, but they couldn't get a permit to film the scene, with filming permits in Tokyo being a very difficult thing to get a hold of, and are usually an expensive and frustrating process. Lin, however, was adamant to film on location, and so were Universal, so they decided to do it anyway. The local law enforcement were not happy about this and came to the set to arrest the director, but Universal had prepared for this and hired a fall guy to claim to be the director. The scapegoat was arrested and taken to jail, where he spent the night, while Justin Lin managed to remain unblemished. The fall guy probably wasn't too happy that his efforts were mostly in vain, with only a piece of the footage being used in the movie, with the majority being filmed in California. Another movie franchise that also failed to pay their permits was the first outing in the Terminator series.
I'll be back.
While the latest Terminator movie, Dark Fate, had an approximate budget of $196 million US, the original 1984 movie had a much smaller budget of $6.4 million US, which in movie-making terms is peanuts. Presumably a lot of that money went on the visual effects and action sequences, because they apparently did not have enough money to pay their filming permits. In fact, the reason why the scenes predominantly take place at night while on the streets of LA is not a coincidence, but was a calculated choice, so they wouldn't run into trouble from the film police, or whoever is the body that deals with film permits. Now that I think about it, it's probably the real police.
That's right.
In fact, the production was so pressed for time and money and didn't have the resources to say, "I'll be back," which meant that they didn't stop shooting even when vast amounts of pesticides were sprayed across the city, meaning that fog effect you see throughout isn't actually a fog at all, but is instead a mass of pesticides. The sequel presumably had no such problems, with an inflated budget of $100 million US. Easy Rider is known as a cult classic and one of the best road movies of all time. A major manifestation of 60s culture, it centers on 2 hippies who ride Harleys across the US on a wonderful journey to find spiritual truth and to make a drug deal.
That's not true!
It is true! Linda, they sold cocaine!
But it was the latter that wreaked havoc on filming, with actors such as Dennis Hopper getting, shall we say, a little bit too into the character. Drug use became rampant on set, with the majority of the scenes being shot with the actors on some kind of substance, or rather causing filming to constantly pause. The crew had to report back to the studio on why they kept being stopped, and I can imagine the studio was not too thrilled with the reasoning. Method actors, huh? Am I right? Boxer Mike Tyson and the Hangover series go hand in hand, with the boxer's cameo in the first movie being a hilarious yet scary moment, with Tyson singing along to Phil Collins, air drumming, demanding his tiger back, and knocking out Zach Galifianakis' Alan. The sequel wanted to pay homage to the boxer by making Ed Helms' Stu get a copy of Tyson's iconic tattoo on his face. But what they forgot to do was ask tattoo artist S. Victor Whitmill to use the design in the movie, and like Tyson in the first movie, was not very happy about it. He may or may not have sung along to Phil Collins, though that bit is unclear. Looking for a slice of the pie, Whitmill decided to sue the studio for plagiarizing the design, which caused havoc for the studio when a judge ruled in the artist's favor. In fact, Warner Bros. Nearly had to pull the movie as they initially tried to digitally remove the tattoo out of the movie at great expense. In the end, it turned out to be cheaper to settle with Whitmill out of court, and that ended up being the decision the studio went with, showing money can buy you everything, even Mike Tyson's facial tattoo. Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy may be most known for the final movie in the series with the iconic and amazing The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but it would not have been possible to make if it wasn't for the first in the series, A Fistful of Dollars. Fistful of Dollars introduced us to Clint Eastwood and the spaghetti western, with Clint Eastwood's unnamed gunslinger arriving to a town and playing two rival gangs against each other while profiting off of their fighting. A Fistful of Dollars was a critical and commercial success, with it gaining many fans across the globe. One of those fans was the Japanese auteur, the great Akira Kurosawa. In fact, Kurosawa wrote Leone a letter labeling the film as a fine film. But then things took a turn when he said, "But it is my film," before taking Leone to court. That's because the plot of A Fistful of Dollars is almost exactly the same as Kurosawa's samurai movie Yojimbo. It's been verified that Leone had seen Yojimbo, and A Fistful of Dollars has been deemed an unofficial remake of Kurosawa's movie. There are a lot of behind-the-scenes stories of Apocalypse Now. So many, in fact, that they warranted their own documentary film, Hearts of Darkness, which showed the true horrors of making the classic war movie. With so many issues during filming, it was probably unsurprising that they once broke the law, but they were probably unaware of it at the time. With a star-studded cast including Martin Sheen and Marlon Brando, another who caused an array of issues, it was with the fresh-faced Lawrence Fishburne that the issues occurred. That's because Fishburne lied when auditioning for the role, claiming he was an adult when he was actually 14, and child labor laws prevent studios from having young actors work for so long, as well as be around guns, which Apocalypse Now most certainly broke. But it worked out for Fishburne, with his career skyrocketing from here, so maybe the film police will let this one slide? As Kubrick was filming Dr. Strangelove, he learned that another great director, Sidney Lumet, director of 12 Angry Men and Dog Day Afternoon, had bought the rights to the novel Failuresafe, where a technical malfunction sends US planes to Russia for a nuclear attack while the US does everything they can to avert war. Does that sound familiar?
I can't quite see what you're getting at.
Well, when Kubrick heard about this, he was not happy, not one bit. Whether or not Failuresafe is plagiarism is a bit of a gray zone, but what Kubrick did next is also a bit of a gray zone. The director threatened a lawsuit and tied the movie up in legal proceedings. And his threats worked, with Kubrick ensuring that Dr. Strangelove got released first, and that his movie would be seen as the original. And that worked too, with Dr. Strangelove being a smash hit at the box office and one of the most revered movies of all time, while Failuresafe went on to be a box office flop, but still a good movie. While we're on the subject of not messing with Stanley Kubrick, we go into another gray zone that Kubrick found himself in: his treatment of Shelley Duvall in The Shining. Kubrick wanted to get a real performance out of Duvall, and seeing as the character she played, Wendy Torrance, was stuck in isolation at the Overlook Hotel with a supernatural child and a homicidal husband slowly going insane, you can imagine how Kubrick treated her. Kubrick harassed Duvall throughout the 35 weeks of filming, hounding her, forcing her to do reshoots, and just outright being rude. And Duvall's performance was certainly real, with her having anxiety as well as losing her hair and being ill. At the time, his treatment of her may or may not have been illegal, but by today's standards, her treatment was a big no-no and would have certainly gotten the director in hot water. Kubrick isn't the only classic director accused of breaking workplace protocol with his actors, and he is made to look tame by Alfred Hitchcock standards. The Psycho and Vertigo director is certainly known for going hard on his cast, but none were treated as badly as the Bird star Tippi Hedren. When Hitchcock wasn't arguably causing animal rights issues by feeding seagulls whiskey to make them more lethargic, he was apparently pelting his star with the angry birds, with him doing this for 5 days. He also slathered her with bird poo, paid other members of the crew to harass her, and even tied real birds to her in the final climax, which for someone with a phobia of birds probably was not fun. Hitchcock's treatment of her was so severe that she actually spent the week in hospital due to exhaustion and bird-related injuries. And you thought your boss was bad. But again, there is one classic director who can even top that off. After making Casablanca, Michael Curtiz was hot property. Known for his quick and efficient work ethic, he quickly became the studio's friend. But people who worked for him were not so keen. Before the days of Casablanca, he committed one of the worst workplace violations of all time. This came during the filming of the end scene in the 1928 movie Noah's Ark, which, as you probably guessed, involved a flooding. Curtiz wanted to shoot the scene for real, opting for an authentic take instead of the use of miniatures, but refused to take into account the danger it caused for the cast and crew. When cameraman Hal Moore raised these issues with Curtiz, Curtiz dismissed him, prompting Moore to quit. Moore's warnings were quickly proven to be valid, with the scene being catastrophic, with 3 extras dying and many others getting injured. What is shocking and frustrating, however, is the fact that Curtiz got off completely scot-free. What was your most shocking story? Any that we missed? Let us know in the comments and make sure to subscribe to Screen Rant to keep up to date on all of our latest videos. See ya!